Hey friends, and welcome to my channel. Today is January wrap-up day. So before I get into the wrap-up, I just want to show you something that I'm super duper proud of. Okay. So I have a chart of all the books I've read, the title, the author, when I started it, when I finished it, how much of it I read, because I do DNF books if they're not good, and my star rating along with if it was a physical book, an ebook, or a audiobook. Yeah, audiobooks count. So let's just get into this big wrap up. And something that I noticed is that I kind of finished the month of January the same way that I started it, but better. And you will see what I mean right now. So the first book I read was an ebook. I started it on the 1st of January and I ended it on the 1st of January because it was like 30 pages. Okay, but I was expecting something really good. So I read Cinderella is Evil by Jamie Campbell. And I liked that it came from the evil stepsister's perspective, but it was not done right. It was very boring, and honestly, I just didn't love it. So I only gave that one 2 stars. And then I read a physical book. And if I'm being completely honest, I kind of switched from physical to audiobook because the audiobook was more enjoyable. So I read The Best of Lewis Carroll, and this obviously is Alice in Wonderland. So I don't remember ever reading Alice in Wonderland before this month. And it was okay. It was cute. I gave it 3 stars. I think if I would have read it when I was little, I would love it more. But it was only okay. And then I read another ebook, which was You, a novel in verse. So not you like the psycho killer Joe you, which I want to get my hands on eventually. But You, a novel in verse by A.T. Makowski. And I only gave it a 2.5 stars. I usually tend to love poetry books, but this one I've heard a million times. It was like love, lost love, love again. And typically I love the love poems, but I didn't this time. In fact, I know one poem in particular is just a country song with the same exact lyrics just put into the book. And I hate that. I'm a country lover. I love country music. That's all I listen to. And that's how I recognized it so quick. But it was like a 2.5 star for me. Just because I've heard it's so unoriginal. And I'm really sorry. I hate being negative about the books that I read. Okay, and then the first book that I DNF'd this year and this month was Where They Found Her by Kimberly McWright. Now, in 2019, I temporarily DNF'd it because of the material in here. There's a dead baby's body found under some leaves in a university town. And I want to be a mom more than anything in this entire world. But due to some health problems, it's harder for me. So I couldn't read it because of the material. And then I tried it this month and it had like 4 or 5 different perspectives. And typically I don't like that unless it's done right. Unless it's done really well. But I did not like it in this one. There were different timelines and it was hard to follow each one. Yes, each chapter says a different person's name and the date, but all the voices sounded the same and sometimes I would forget who I was reading as, so then I'd go back and check, and it was just too much work, so I DNF'd it after 160 pages. And then I got an arc. Actually, I got a couple arcs that I read this month. But the first one was Cries from the Lost Island by Kathleen O'Neill Gear. This was a very cute book. The first 100 pages were amazing. Action-packed. It's magical realism. It has demons. It's ancient Egypt, historical. It's very good. Especially the first 100 pages. After that, it gets very heavy dialogue and very... I don't like the heavy dialogue personally, so I only gave it 3 stars. But basically, it follows Cleo, who thinks that she's the reincarnated version of Cleopatra until she dies. And I love the first part of the book because it's her and Hal's relationship, and it's her fighting demons, and then she obviously loses the battle with one of the demons, and then it just starts getting very heavy dialogue about her death and about what happened to her and things like that. So it got not as exciting after the initial part, but I still gave it 3 stars, and I think that this is perfect for like a middle grade person. It's very easy to read, and it was a good book in general. And then the next one that I read, so I'm partaking in a lot of reading challenges this year. And one was to read a book from A to Z. Every letter of the alphabet has to be the first letter in the title. And so I picked this book up because it started with Z, and I was going to be cool and go from Z to A, but now I'm just picking whatever books work. And then I'll figure out the letters later, just whatever ones I need. But I read Zero Day by Jan Gency, and this was really good. I gave it probably 4.5 stars. Because there was one aspect that I did not like, that did not seem real to me. But this 8-year-old Addie gets kidnapped, and her family is a political family. And when she escapes 8 years later, and her dad is president when she escapes. And there's like a lot of terrorism going on around that time. And when she comes home, she's not the same as she was when she left, but it's 8 years later and she's been held captive for 8 years. So, of course, she's not the freaking same. And this was a suspenseful thriller page turner. I definitely recommend it. It was so good. Oh, the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars was because of her parents' reaction when she came back. It was like... they were like, oh, yeah, you were on vacation for 8 years. And, I mean, they thought she was dead, and they didn't even react when she escaped. Like, their lack of reaction just, it tormented me. And I get that he's the president, and he has to look out for the country, but that's your freaking daughter, and you thought she was dead. And that's why I only give it 4 or 4.5 stars. Probably 4 stars. Another 4-star read for me was The Best of Lewis Carroll. Again, Through the Looking Glass. So I really liked Through the Looking Glass. It was amazing. It was actually perfection. So I don't know why it's only a 4-star read. It should have been 5 stars. I would reread Through the Looking Glass before I would reread Alice in Wonderland. Unpopular opinion, but it's true. Then I was trying to partake in a green cover readathon. I only ended up reading 1 book, and I think I had 5 on my TBR. Boo. I suck. But The 11th Plague by Jeff Hirsch. So in this book, America and China have been in a war, and this is the aftermath of the war. It left America devastated. We have nothing left. And I loved the first 100 pages. It was action-packed, it was thrilling, it was amazing, and then it got very heavy dialogue again, and for that reason, I only gave it 3 stars, just because I don't like the books that are heavy dialogue and things. I find it boring. But in general, this was a decent book, and I would definitely recommend this again for like a middle-aged person. It was good, but look at that freaking cover. That's amazing, right? And it definitely makes you think about like if China and America were to go to war, who would win? Me and my husband had this conversation. We both think that America would be gone. China would beat us. So, yeah, it just gets you thinking, and I love those kind of books. This next one was a reread for me. The Duff. I absolutely love this book. I've read it a few times, and I like the movie version too. But it's like a coming of age novel. It's learning to accept yourself, and there's even a love aspect. It's amazing. 5 stars all around. Amazing. Then we went from a 5-star read to a very disappointing read. Brave New Girl by Rachel Vincent. I gave this 2.5 stars. And the thing is that I was reading it. I got like 2/3 of the way. Probably almost to 200 pages in. And then the author made a decision right there that just altered my perspective on this book. And it completely, like, I felt like I wasted my time reading it. And this is the first in a duology that I will not be finishing. It was, I just lost all hope for the characters in that one little move that she made. I can't tell you what it is because spoilers, but it just killed my heart. It just killed me. This next one was also a reread. Emily Dickinson Envelope Poems. And I read this during my 24-hour readathon. Which, by the way, I learned a 24-hour readathon is just reading when you can during the day. You don't have to stay up for 24 freaking hours like I attempted to do. You just have school or work or what a life, mom life, whatever kind of life you got going on, you can read in between all that other stuff you got to do that day, and that counts as a 24-hour readathon. So that's how I'm going to start doing them. Anyways, let's go back to this book. It's a 5-star read for me. I knew it would be because I've already read it. But it's literally just envelopes that Emily Dickinson had in her house where she wrote poems. And then if you can't read it on this side, they have it right here. And it's just really cute, really easy read. I love Emily Dickinson and her poetry. So if you don't like poetry, you probably won't like it. But I loved it. And then my next one I DNF'd, Such a Good Girl by Amanda K. Morgan. I had to pick an author with my same initials, and this works for it. But I typically read 100 pages before I DNF something. I only read like 4 chapters. I'm not going to lie to you. I could already tell the trope that I absolutely hate is when my character is just perfect. Like, she's so perfect. Everybody loves her. Everybody wants to be her. She's amazing. Or he. Like, I hate the perfect character. I want my characters to have flaws, like I have flaws. And that just wasn't happening with this book, and I'm not going to waste my time. So I DNF'd it. It might be a good book. I don't know. I hate that trope. Not going to read it. Then, okay, so my book is at school in my locker, but I read Obsidian from the Lux Beginnings series by Jennifer L. Amertrott. And it took me 4 days to read it, and I gave it 5 stars. if I'm being 100% honest with you, I went from audiobook to physical back and forth. But it was so good. And I typically don't like aliens or anything to do with aliens. But it kind of gives me like Twilight-y vibes of aliens, but it was amazing. I loved it. Then during my 24-hour readathon, I read How Do I Love You, which is just a parent-to-child poetry book I've had since I was a kid. It makes me think of my mommy. It's by P.K. Halian. And it's just, I love the way you act so brave when you fall and hurt your knee. I love to see you deep in thought. And it's just a really cute book. Like I said, it reminds me of home. Reminds me of my mama. Then the audiobook that I read after 5 stars audiobook. I've read some of these poems before, but I've never read the whole thing. So I read Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. And I loved it. I especially loved it on audiobook because Shel Silverstein narrates it himself and all the different voices and everything. It was just such an enjoyable experience. So 5 stars, audiobook. Then I have another audiobook called The Yellow Wallpaper. I actually read that in community college a couple years ago, and it was good enough that I read it again on audiobook. It was 3 stars, and it's just a really easy, fun read. It's like not very long either. I think the audiobook was like 30 minutes, and I believe it's like 50 pages or something like that. And then my next physical book is Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. This was a 5-star read for me. It's amazing. It's been made into a movie, Love, Simon. So I would love to see that movie now that I've read the book. But it is so good. It follows Simon, who is a closeted gay teenager. And he falls in love with a mysterious stranger who goes to his school online. He goes by Blue, and it's kind of like a mystery of who is the one that he loves, and will they or won't they come out of the closet to be together? Is it a soulmate or just like an online fling kind of thing? So I urge you to read this. If you only read one book, actually, I did love this. It doesn't take away from my love for this one, but there's one other one that is like higher on the list that you should read first. But this one is amazing, and it gives me all the feels, and I love it. And then we're back to audiobooks. I read The Landlady by Roald Dahl. It was a 3-star audiobook. It was really good. I loved it. It was just too short. Like, I was getting goosebumps. I was getting scared, which was great. I love that. It was thrilling. It was amazing. But it just ended like, I just wanted more. I crave more. That is the only problem with that book. Then I believe just kidding, this isn't the last one. Okay, another audiobook that I picked was 5 stars. It's A Monster Call by Patrick Ness. Alright, so the next book was an audiobook as well. It was a 5-star read for me. It was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, and I could see the ending coming from the beginning, which typically I don't love, but in some cases it's okay. In this case, it was great. It was great, which is, the That's not right, but it was great. I loved it so much. So it's about this kid who talks to a monster who's kind of shaped like a tree. He's huge. It's actually a movie starring Liam Neeson as the monster, but it was so good because the kid's mom is sick. She has cancer, and he's very scared that she's not going to make it. And he talks to the monster about his fears, and the monster tells him tales of being brave and things, and like death and things like that. And it's just a really moving book, and 5 stars. Definitely recommend it. The last audiobook that I read this year, well, I guess this year's true, but I mean this month, is Beauty and the Beast, because I love anything Beauty and the Beast related. I love the Disney movie and everything, but I've never heard or read the original. And so, yeah, it was a really quick audiobook. It was 3 stars for me, which is weird because Beauty and the Beast, everything is 5 stars. I love it. It's my favorite fairy tale. However, I didn't know the original, and it was changed a lot for Disney. And I love the Disney version, and this was a good version. It's just not the one I'm used to, not the one that I love. So it was only 3 stars. And then I read a physical book, and this is the one that if you only get one book out of this whole video, this is the one that you have to read. Well, maybe not have to read. I especially wouldn't recommend this for someone who's depressed or dealing with sadness. I don't know. Maybe I would, because it actually would help. I don't know. The Shape of Family by Shippy Samonia Gouda. I'm very sorry I butchered that name. This was so good. It's about a family that's grieving and a tragedy. Oh, and it was just... Okay, so this tragedy happens, and then you see how the family moves on from it. And you get 4 different perspectives, which typically I don't love, but it was done so well in this book that it's okay. It's okay that it was 4 different perspectives. My favorite perspectives were Prim and Karina, the brother and sister. And I could so relate to Karina and the guilt she felt because of the tragedy that wasn't her fault, but I have this huge backstory about that. If you want me to talk about it someday, then just put it in the comments and I will. But I can completely relate to Karina feeling guilt over something that was never her fault. And it kind of ruined a lot of her life. And it's just the journey of the entire family to get past this tragedy. And it was, this is like my new all-time favorite book. It's 5 stars, and I urge you to try this book. Then I read ebook, but I kind of flipped back and forth from ebook to audiobook, and it was Stillhouse Lake. I don't remember the author. I didn't write it down. I'm so sorry. But it was like a crime-y book. It was, this woman finds out that her husband has been raping and murdering women in their garage, and she had no idea. So he goes to prison, but she's scared for her life and her kids' life. So they pack up and change identities and move, and they are constantly on the move. The premise sounds amazing, but it was very boring, and I did not like it. I'm surprised that I even finished it, but it was a 2-star book for me. I didn't enjoy it. I wanted to because the premise sounded amazing, but I didn't love it. The next one on my list is a physical book. It's the last one that I DNF'd this month. So yeah, a total of 3 DNFs in 1 month. That sounds like a lot, but you know what? I'm just a picky person, and I know what I like and what I don't like. And Bombshell by Rowan Manus. And this was supposed to be another green cover because of the green right there. I've been reading this since like the 6th of this month, and I finally DNF'd it today because I only got to like less than 150 pages. And honestly, I thought, okay, it's about this girl who is just your average teenager, but online she can be whoever she wants to be. So it sounded great. And I thought, because I love Catfish, that I would like this. But I think the thing with Catfish is that it's true, for one. And for two, it's a mystery. It's like, who is the catfish? Why are they doing it? Here, you get to know who the catfish is and why she does it. And I found it very boring, very lackluster. And I didn't like it. And then the last book that I read, see, I told you, I started with Cinderella is Evil, and I ended with Snow White Blood Red by Cameron Jace. And it's an ebook, but Cinderella is Evil was only 2 stars because it was the same story. It was very boring. It had a couple details that were different, but I didn't enjoy it. This ebook was a 4-star read for me, so I doubled my score. And this one's like a retelling of Snow White in a way, but it came from the evil queen. And it's kind of like a letter to Grimm, the person who wrote Snow White, and asking why her name was the evil queen and why she didn't get a chance to become someone better than that. And I really, really enjoyed this. And then you also have kind of like a supernatural aspect in it that was very interesting and not something that I would expect from a Snow White book. And I found out that this is like a series that he does, and I would love to read the rest of the series. They are very short, easy books. I think this one was like 30 pages again, so it's the same as the first one. But this one was done much better, and it was good. It was really enjoyable. It was a different kind of twist on Snow White, and that's exactly what I was looking for. I love fairy tales, and I would read anything fairy tale related or retellings or anything like that. So, that was my month of reading. I read 25 books this month. Wow, I read a lot. That's a lot for me because I was only going to read 5 this month. So, I'm doing pretty good. But there were only a few that were like amazing. The rest of them have kind of disappointed me, but it's okay. February is going to be better. So, I will see you in the next video. Bye.